As we prepare to put siding on, one of the most critical things we need to prepare for our deck attachment is this board right here. This is our deck ledger. This is going to be the solid attachment from our deck to the house. There's a lot of code regulations on this board because this is like one of the most common things to fail in decks, and it can collapse the whole deck. It's killed people over the years. So there's a lot of regulations about how these are attached, how they're flashed. And today I'm gonna show you how we're gonna go about ours. There are a number of different solutions to do this, but I'm gonna stick with a pretty traditional route of through bolts through our band joist and some head flashing above. So let's get started. This might seem simple, just to drill some holes, throw some bolts in it, and it's good to go, but there's some nuances that I have to really think ahead about. So of course, I use Chief Architect. I fired that up and helped me plan out where all my joist locations for my deck are gonna be, my bolt hole locations, and how they're gonna mate up with the joists in the house. My I-joists below this door run perpendicular with how my deck joists are gonna run. So I've tried to mark them out the best I could, 16 inches on center. You can't really see them, but my bolts through my ledger need to clear both these I-joists and the deck joists. To make life a little easier, I was able to shift the deck on the plan so that the deck joist lined up with the I-joist for the most part. That way I can land a bolt in the middle of each joist bay and we're good to go there. Now here is the second caveat with hardware, and that is our tension ties. These guys right here are required by code in at least 2 locations on the deck. These are DTT 2Z Simpson fasteners. They work by passing a threaded 1/2-inch rod from the inside to the outside of the house and tightening it. That way the deck can never pull away from the house. I have I-joists here, not solid sawn lumber, so I actually have to add a piece of 3-foot long solid wood blocking to my I-joists, and I need to make sure that the stack ups of all these match so that our tension tie will fit in the finished deck installation. Once I had my 2x10 cut to length, I started by laying out all the deck joist locations and my fastener holes. I also noted where my tension ties got to be, and these have to be within 2 feet of the ends, and there's all sorts of layout rules for where these fasteners have to be. So I marked the guidelines basically on the board to make it easier for myself. For example, these have to be at least 2 inches from the edge. I think it's 3/4 inch from the bottom edge minimum, but 2 inches from the top. So I just made it 2 inches here. These can't be more than 5 inches apart, I believe, and there's a whole bunch of other rules. I'm spacing them at 16 inches on center. There are a couple different fastener options you can use. I decided to use the 1/2-inch through bolt. It's pretty tried and true. It's very sturdy. It doesn't require any grip of like a lag screw into wood or anything. It's just a straight through bolt with a nut on it. This is 4 inches long, so it should be plenty to go through my 1.5-inch joist plus my 1.1/8 rim board, leaving room for washers and the nut. Originally, I wanted to use longer bolts and use what are called these deck-to-wall spacers. They're a 1/2-inch polypropylene plastic spacer, and that way you actually don't even flash the top of the deck ledger. You just let the water run behind it. I probably would put a piece of flashing underneath to kick it out over the siding, but I was reading more on it even after I bought these and was planning to use them, and I found that they're not really approved for use with engineered rim boards, I guess because there's too much leverage on the engineered wood and it's not solid lumber. So I had to ditch this idea. I'm gonna go with the traditional board flat up against the sheathing of the house, and then I'll just put a piece of head flashing over top of it. One note on the length of this ledger, I cut this to 16 foot 7 inches long. I originally planned this to be a 16-foot deck, but I didn't really want the railing to take up square footage on the interior of the deck. So I'm giving this a little bit extra, and I'm also gonna picture frame this deck, which means I'll have an edge board running around the perimeter so that you don't see the ends of the deck board sticking out. The picture frame method requires a little bit of extra blocking, a little bit more room, so we're gonna have to probably add an extra joist on the end of this to help support that picture frame. It actually works out all right because that extra joist can also tie into our tension tie. So we're gonna address a little bit more of those details in the actual deck video, but I just wanted to note that on the length. We gave it a little bit more than the original 16-foot planned. Here's what I'm thinking for the elevation to mount this joist at. This is the bottom of my door flange. I think I want about a 3-inch step down from the top of the ledge here. I think that'll be comfortable, and we don't really get that much snow anyway. I think that's the only reason you really drop it. So my deck joist would need to come down to about 4 inches where that mark is right there. That's the top of my joist and a 1-inch thick deck board. That puts the bottom of my deck joist at 9¼ inches down where that mark is, and I actually have my I-joist kind of sketched out. So the bottom of my deck joist is still above the bottom flange of my I-joist right here. That should be plenty of area so that the tension ties can grab in the middle of my I-joist here where I'm gonna put my blocking, and all of my through bolts for the ledger are within the area of the band joist that's acceptable, because there are limitations on how close to the edge of the interior band joist your bullets can be as well. So they have to basically be in the middle and at least 2 inches from the ends. That means I need to watch out for situations like this where I have a band joist that ends mid-joist. If I just plop the bolt right in the dead center of that, it'd probably be too close to the edge, so I'm gonna have to make sure that I pay attention to that when I'm drilling my holes through. That way I can offset just that one. After a good bit of thinking and marking and measuring and one exploratory hole drilled from the inside, I think we have it locked down. This is gonna be the hole for my tension tie. You can see it's gonna be right up against this eye joist, but just offset so we can put our blocking in right here. And then that gives me the end of our deck ledger. It's gonna be right about here. One thing I had to be mindful of was right above this, there's a window. And there's gonna be a window trim on that that's 5.5 inches wide on the right side, and our deck railing is gonna be 42 inches tall. So it's actually going to be higher than the bottom of that windowsill. So I gotta make sure that that doesn't interfere, and I think we are just like 1/2 of an inch shy based on that. So that was somewhat luck, I think, but I think we'll be good there. If not, we can modify the railing, I guess, later down the road. Then from here over, I counted 4 sheets of sheathing to give me 16 foot, plus another 7 inches to find my other end of my ledger over there. I'm gonna make 2 marks, and then I'm going to put 6-inch zip tape as an extra barrier here. I don't know if it's actually required, but I've seen pros on Instagram like Dr. Dex, he's a really good account to follow. He always puts like a self-adhered flashing or a self-adhered membrane up against the surface here just for an extra level of water protection. Even though I'm gonna put a head flashing here, I think it's a good idea. We are all taped up and ready to actually set the ledger. My first step was to make what I call my patented invention, the ledger hanger 5000, out of some scrap wood. Then I measured down my 4 inches from my board and then another 9.25 and put a little line, can't really see it there, but now I'm gonna screw this thing up against the wall, and then on the other side I have to set that one at the exact same height. My plan is to do it with my rotary laser and my transit and the grade rod. We'll see how accurate that ends up. If not, I have my 12 foots to be able to plate level that I could probably set across the two, but then I have to be in the middle of it to read it. So the laser is nice because you can just be wherever. I'm aiming for a stud too, so these things have some amount of strength to them. Yeah, I think that'll hold. Just gotta hold like, I don't know, 30 pounds, half of a 2x10. This Bosch unit has been a lifesaver, and it was only 400 bucks, factory conditioned. These tools make life a lot easier. My idea here is to have that laser down there as sort of a reference line that's totally level. Then I can drop this, and wherever it starts beeping, I'm gonna make a mark where my top is here. Then I'm gonna go over and find the same exact point, and that's where I know where to mark my other one. Is this thing beeping yet? Might be blocking the laser. Oh, there it is. Very, very sensitive. Okay, I just made a little mark on my grade rod. Now I should be able to come over here and do the same thing. That is incredible. Now just transferring my mark that I just made on my grade rod, and that is where I will set my other spacer to. That was easy. I love modern technology and tools. Everything always works in theory, but in theory, these two mounts should be at the same exact height. I'm gonna put the deck ledger up there and put a level on it for sanity. It's a pretty good example of having to get a little bit creative when you're working by yourself. This board probably weighs, I would say 60 pounds at least. Having a way to sit it up here, kind of important. Set it on my ledger hanger 3000. Holy smokes. Okay, board is up there. It's right about here I realized I forgot the flashing. I'm gonna put some joist tape on this to make sure that no water can seep into this over time and cause rot to the surface of the wood. This is just best practice, so I've read, when it comes to deck flashing. This stuff makes the perfect joist tape. I almost forgot we need to put our deck ledger flashing up before we put the ledger on. I'm using this trim coil. It's a galvanized steel, same as our roof and our softened fascia are made out of from McElroy metal. Thickness is 0.019 inches. That's the code requirement for deck ledger flashing. And I'm cutting this so that it will have about a 3-inch overlap of pieces in the middle. I have to do it in 2 sections because my sheet metal brake isn't long enough. And then on the ends, I'm gonna have another 1/2 inch overhanging my deck ledger. Ledger is 16'7" long, so I'm cutting this like 8'5½", something like that. So we'll have that overlap, and we'll have a little bit on the ends to wrap down over the end of the ledger. I really should invest in a pair of electric shears. Still got a lot of metal cutting to do on this project. Sometimes you just need a straight edge longer than 6 or 8 feet, and that is where I just love having this stabilo level. Bought it for framing, but I have found so many other uses for it. George, be quiet, dude. Please. Please, 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 please. Couldn't get that much better by eye. So we're moving right along here, and I've got some nails fastening this flashing in place, but I wanted to point out I could have totally made this flashing a lot taller, and I really should have. Because we're using James Hardie, they require 2 inches above the deck surface. So we're gonna still be adding 1 inch of deck board on this, which means I gotta have 3 inches of clearance from the bottom of this flashing to where the siding is gonna be. So that really just barely left me enough room to get a nail in there. And honestly, I didn't even realize this until I did that other side, and I'd already zip tape flashed it. I'm gonna have to trim about 1 inch off that zip tape at the bottom. But really, that much zip tape overlap, I mean, it's gonna be about a 3/4 inch. But it's not really the most robust solution, so I don't really want to change it at this point. I'm not going to rip it all out, but I should have made this like 6 inches high. Instead, this is about a 3 3/4 inch height right here. Should have made it like 6 inches and then just cut out underneath where the door was. But that's a life lesson learned. I'm still going to get some flashing tape on here, but it's really not the amount of overlap that I wish I could get. It's only going to be, you know, maybe 1 inch or so of overlap. Just another lesson of 20/20 hindsight in construction. If you're not thinking like 20 steps ahead, you're gonna get caught with your pants down. We're all flashed, and now for the scary part, which is actually drilling the 1/2 inch holes and hoping that everything lines up, especially those tension ties. My gosh, my dog will not quit. George! Oh, hold on. Dude, what is it? What are you seeing? Everybody say hi to George. George. Say hi to YouTube. Almost guarantee you there was a deer or something over there. He just will not let it go. What are you barking at, Grace, now? He looks like a puppy from afar, but you look at that little beard, you can tell he's a senior. 7 years old now, I think. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna start off with these 3 end holes here, and then my tension tie I think I'm gonna do from the inside to just make sure that it's lined up with the eye joist. I can always shift this joist a little bit if I need to, but I can't move that eye joist anymore. Here goes nothing with the 1/2 inch drill bit. We'll see if we're all lined up there. Okay, switching to my paddle drill bit. Let's check it. That's pretty much where I expected it to be. In reference, here is my little test hole. That should be approximately where my tension tie comes through. And so that's kind of how I had it mocked up in the same joist bay here. Boom, there's all 3 holes. I had to do this middle one here because it's a greater than 16-inch span before I get to the next one that's gonna be over in this bay. And so I'm gonna keep my DTT2Z hole just directly over from this. I actually have one here, and I'm gonna mock it up with a piece of 2x. That way I know exactly where that hole's gotta be to match up right once I put this blocking in. For the blocking itself, I need to put a 3-foot long piece of 2x6 along this eye joist, nail it in a bunch of times and clinch all the nails, and that should give it the necessary holding power on the eye joist. Here's the one that I have to do from the inside. Because of this joint, it would have definitely fallen within the 2-inch minimum distance from this rim board. So I went in about 3.5 inches. It's the same height as all the rest. Let's drill it. Definitely don't prefer that because it brings all the chips to the inside. Last one I'm doing of that. While I'm up here, I thought it wouldn't be a bad idea to air seal these penetrations. So I'm just running a bead of sealant around the perimeter of the hole and then trying to get as much on the threads and in the hole as I can when I push the bolt through. If you tighten quickly enough, it won't really spin on you. The last step before mounting the brackets for the tension ties is to put this stiffener in the eye joist. So this is a 3-foot long piece. It'll sit up here like this. The minimum spec is 16 nails and then they're clinched. So that means they're gonna stick through the backside and I gotta hammer them and flatten them so that they can't pull out. The nail's bent at a right angle. And this will give me something sturdy to screw that bracket onto, and the pulling force of the tension tie is spread out over a larger portion of the eye joist. Here we go, ready for the brackets. Here's how the bracket and the threaded rod is gonna lay out in the wall. This being an outside joist, this is my interior eye joist, and then I'll center the wall assembly right here. So I'll mount this guy probably about 6 inches back from the face of my eye joist, and then that will give me plenty of room, about 6 more inches on the outside to mount this with my deck joist. To mount the hangers, the screws come in the kit. They are some really beefy, it's like a 3/8 inch drive little Simpson screw, and that will go in every one of the holes for each hanger. Simple as that. Here's one last piece of metal I'm gonna put on the deck ledger. This is just like a little J channel. Any water that is running over here will come down this flap and come down this J channel, and then I'll deal with the detail down here below. But I just peeled back the tape a little bit. I'm gonna slide this up in here. I had to slot this out to accommodate it a bit. And then I'll put a couple nails in there, fold the tape back down. Down below, I bent this little tab over here, and I'm not exactly sure what this trim at the bottom is gonna look like. We're gonna have siding running up to here, so I wanna cover that top edge of siding somehow. I might do a simple just like L trim or something. I'm not really worried about shedding water down here because we have a rain screen right here, so it's gonna go down to the bottom of the wall anyway. So it's really just gotta be aesthetic. Most of the flashing really should be taken care of with this guy up here. Here's this on the outside. On second thought, I don't think I'm gonna install the brackets yet, just because I wanna push this thing back and don't want to impale myself on it while we were putting siding up. But before I put sheetrock on, I gotta make sure I fasten the inside there. I'm not a dad yet, but I'd like to borrow a dad line. Yep, I don't think that's going anywhere. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one.